I want to talk about the brain structure of the narcissist a little bit more, but really kind of how it plays out in real life. In a previous episode, I talked a little bit about some of the brain structures and the imaging, what science has shown us, how the hardwiring of the narcissist brain is actually different than the normie brain. And the area I want to hone in on today is a structure in our brain called the amygdala. So the amygdala, one of the functions it has is it's the like the threat alert. It fires when we perceive a threat. And so the narcissist brain, that thing is set on 11. So not just from 0 to 10, but all the way up to 11. It's like a hair trigger ready to fire any second. And it's like a panic button. And this is something that is part of the brain structure, but also part of what we develop from our conditioning, being raised by narcissists or whatever the case may be as a child that's developing NPD or has NPD. And so it's really like this panic structure in our brain that is set on hypersensitivity. So like an example of it, when I was a kid, at the holidays, my mom and I would have these battles, right? And because she was a narcissist parent in my story, and she always wanted me to wear a sweater. So like when Thanksgiving or Christmas, when people would be coming over to the house for Thanksgiving dinner or whatever the case may be, she would always want me to wear a sweater. Now, I hated sweaters. It's kind of ironic. I'm wearing a sweater right now in this video, but as an adult, things have changed. But when I was a kid, I hated sweaters. The sweaters were always so itchy. They were wool. And even now, I don't wear wool because my skin is sensitive to it. And I always knew, like, I dreaded the holiday coming up because I knew that she was going to make me wear a sweater. And I didn't want to wear those dang sweaters that were terrible. And so we'd get into these battles. She'd be like, "You have to wear a sweater," and I'd be like, "No, this is the worst holiday ever." And we would fight and back and forth, and I would get so mad, and like it would probably seem irrationally so. If it's just a stupid sweater, like who cares. I didn't really care how they looked or anything like that. And yeah, the itchy collar and stuff, that was part of it. But I think really what got me was the feeling of being controlled. It would really fire that panic, or that the amygdala, that panic button in my brain. And so we'd battle. I'd stand in my room for hours. No, I'm crying. I'm not going to wear these dumb sweaters. And so what would happen is when the noise of all that got too high, like my mom would be mad and frustrated and upset, and my amygdala would fire that panic mode. And I wouldn't even like think about her and that she was upset or any of that. I was just like, gotta get out of here. So I'd go hide out in the basement or stay locked up in my room or sneak out to the backyard and try to just get out of it altogether, because I didn't want to wear the dumb sweater. But really, I didn't want to be controlled, because that was caused to panic. Like I had to perform something, and that was just, the amygdala being on overdrive just would get super triggered and super fired up by that. And it wasn't even like rebellion. It really felt like survival to me. Her expectations, that everybody, they are seeing and all that stuff. It was like, I am getting out of here. And that is a pattern that really has followed me through my whole life. Now, I don't just always physically run away, but avoidance of a situation that might trigger that panic has been a big part of my MO over these years. Uh, you know, I was we were talking a bit about narcissism in this group that I'm in, the circle that I'm in, and I was discovering that I used avoidance to avoid when I felt mad about something. And another person in there was like, "Oh, really? Avoidance for that?" Yeah, because he's understanding how narcissism works, and I was like, avoidance is like, I'm a chef, but avoidance is salt, man. I'll sprinkle that sucker on everything. Whether I'm mad, whether I'm panicked, whether I think somebody wants something from me, and it's kind of like strategy 1 through 10. All 10 of them are avoidance, because it's a panic, it's a survival mechanism, and clearly wearing a sweater to a Thanksgiving dinner is not a matter of life and death. But that amygdala in the brain is so turned up high that my brain, my psychology, my whole self operates like it's a survival type of situation, and it's really difficult to deal with sometimes, because for me and for the people around me, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. If because here, just sitting here talking about it to you guys, it's like, okay, a sweater, whatever, itchy neck, not a huge deal. Wear a turtleneck under there. There's other options, but it was like I couldn't even think in a problem solving way, or I couldn't even think to like try to reason with my mom about it. It was just like the situation occurred, I would go into a panic and just operate from a survival panic mode. So, even now, when things feel overwhelming, my amygdala fires off and I start feeling that panic. But understanding it, realizing that's what's happening, not that I'm like always like, oh, here's my amygdala occasionally, but I'm like, oh, here's that feeling, here's that panic. I'm panicking. So I can make a different choice. Maybe not in the moment, sometimes, and I think I'll get better at doing it in the moment. But that recognition of that pattern helps me pause sometimes before I react. It's not perfect, but it's a start to making different choices because I don't want to be operating like I'm under threat of survival for things that have nothing to do with that are nowhere near that big. I want to be able to have a satisfying life and have relationships with people who I vibe with, and so that's something that gets in the way of that. And so I'm learning how to deal with that, but understanding that it's actually a hardwiring or a brain structure thing, and then learning that okay, that's the case, that's me. So how do I start operating with this knowledge that that's what's going on, rather than just being overwhelmed and taken over by the feeling? It's like once you have the awareness is so powerful because once you have the awareness, you can start making some different choices in the moment even. So practice that. Understand that that's what's going on. Your amygdala, that panic button in your brain, is turned up to super high, 11, right? At a 1 to 10 scale. And that's why you have these responses that don't make a lot of sense sometimes. Situations that aren't really a life-threatening situation, but your body, your chemistry, fires off like it. That's what's going on. So the awareness is key. Understand that. Be kind to yourself because you're not going to be perfect. I know I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm working to be kind to myself about it. It's not that I'm bad. It's not even that I'm defective. It's just that my brain works differently. And so all of our brains work differently than each other, right? And so the more we're aware of those things, the more we can start navigating our lives in a way that works for what we want. Whether you want to have better relationships or not, whatever it is for you, understanding these things, these differences in the way your brain functions are going to help you create that in a much more satisfying way, and likely create a more satisfying world around you as well. Because I think that yes, a lot of the behaviors and responses and stuff of a narcissist are hurtful to non-narcissistic people in relationships with them. But some of that hurt, and sometimes a lot of that hurt, is because the other person takes it personally. Like our unusual response or lack of response or avoidance, they take it as a personal attack on them. And that's not what's happening. I mean, when you're in that panic and survival, I mean, you're definitely not thinking about the other person. I know I'm not. I'm just trying to get this situation done so the threat is gone. And understanding that maybe there's not really a threat or not a big threat after all really helps to start being more present and not do the responses or the avoidance that causes for people to feel hurt from it. And my goal isn't to make them not feel hurt, but my goal is to be more authentic about who I am and what's going on. But I know that actually helps people to take it less personally and not be hurt. So it actually is a win-win. So that's what I'm understanding about that panic button, the overactive, the hyperactive amygdala in the narcissist brain. And that's how I'm using that information, that understanding, to start changing the way my life looks so that things just start working better in a more satisfying way. Because that's what it's about, right? I mean, that's what I'm up to here. I'm not trying to cure myself of narcissism or anything like that. I think that's irrelevant and kind of a silly concept. What I'm really trying to do is understand the ways that my brain works and my emotional body works so that I can operate effectively with that. Nobody gave me the manual. The manual I got to watch in the world around me was like the Windows computers when I'm running on a Mac computer. Now I'm starting to understand the manual of the Mac computer so I can start operating in a way that works. It'll never look like how a Windows computer does. I mean, they're both computers. They both do stuff. I'm a human. I live life and do things. but not in the exact same way that I've tried to force myself to be all these years. So hopefully that causes some insights for you, helpful. Subscribe, give a thumbs up, drop some comments below, questions you might have, insights you might have about this, what we're talking about here, difficulties, challenges you're having. I'd be happy and love to interact with you guys, answer any questions, learn from your experiences if you've got great strategies that are working for you, because I don't know it all. We're in this together. So comment below and see you next time.